Today, well, first of all, we're going to start with our mission statement. I'm Chantel. I'm with Career and Internship Services. It's our job to engage you in the career planning process through self-assessment, understanding of what is available in the world of work so you can set goals and market yourself. And I know I'm reading this. We'll help connect you with employers to help you embark on a successful career path, whatever you determine that to be. And that is what we are here to do. How we do that is through different services like mycatcareers.com. Hopefully you are all on mycatcareers.com. If not, I highly, highly suggest you pick up a card, or there's an instruction sheet over there, a little more detail about how to get registered and how to search for jobs on mycatcareers. All kinds of stuff on there. Student employment, if you need to work part-time while you're going to school, if you need summer jobs, if you need a job just for the weekend. We have people calling all the time that I need help moving firewood today. So if you need a temporary job or just some quick cash, get on there. There's also internships available. So as you're working towards your career path, you want to try out some jobs, maybe you need the internship credit with your program. Internships are also listed on there, and then of course full-time employment. This is available to you as an alumni after you graduate forever. So remember your login and password. The rest of your we also offer career coaching and advising, and these career coaches are wonderful. They'll help you figure out, they'll do some resume critiques with you, mock interviewing, so that you're ready for things like on-campus interviews. You'll have your resume ready when for career fair, when we have our career fairs. Like I said, alumni employment also, we have a lot of employers that are looking for experienced workers as well. So once you graduate, if you change jobs, if something happens in the economy, we've had a lot of alumni recently getting back online and calling to get their logins and passwords and learn how to use mycatcareers. We offer fairs, workshops, presentations all the time. There's also another brochure. Forgive me for having to get up and down like this. All kinds of workshops on this brochure on the back. Obviously, we're towards the end of the semester. There's only a few left this semester, but we'll have a whole new one here in just another month or so. And then we have a library full of resources for you in our office. So please swing by. We're right over there in 177. There for you, and all of our services are free to you as well. This is our career model. The career coaches will work with you on this. Usually, generally, during your freshman year, you'll start with the self-assessment, figure out what motivates you, what are your interests, work that into the world of work. How does that fit into that world of work? What's going to be a good path for you? And then set goals. Working from that, setting some goals on where do I go from here? Try some internships, maybe study abroad, try some summer jobs, that kind of thing, and then working finally. So you usually go from your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, really hit the job searching hard at that point, doing some on-campus interviews, and they'll help you figure out how to negotiate an offer.
I'll try and start. Alan Armstrong, GIS manager for Gallatin County. And it sounds more impressive than it really is, because we're a pretty small group. There's only 3 of us in the department, and we're one of just a small group of counties in the state that actually has a GIS unit in them. There might be somebody at some of the counties that's doing GIS, but typically what you'll find is only the tier 1 or the more populated counties, or those that have the money or the growth, let's say, will have a GIS department and people dedicated to doing that kind of work. So my background is, I guess I've always been involved in geography, even though I did not go to school for that. I went to school at Montana Tech for geological engineering, and out of that, when I graduated, the oil business was not what it is today, and so it was difficult to find work in that field. So I kind of gravitated to more sciences, and ended up working in geography, working on some of the early stages of what's now called GIS type software. So I've been involved in that for, I guess I graduated in '85, so I've been involved since then. And still enjoy it. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think this is just one field that's wide open for a lot of applications. And I think when I talk to a lot of people today, they want to get into jobs that really make a difference they want to feel like what they're doing is making a difference in their community, or if they're working for a national agency or a wildlife protection program or whatnot. But making a difference is key. We don't make that much of a difference at a county level. We'd like to think we do, but you know, we might make data or make decisions that we think would make a difference. However, it kind of gets stuck at the bottleneck of politics. So that's one frustration. But we do so many different things involving geography, GIS mapping analysis that you know, I can't even begin to tell you all the different projects that we work on. But that's what makes it fun. Is it can always be different. We can always choose to, if one day I don't feel like working on this, it's like, well, I can work on that project. That needs to be done as well. We have 3 or 4 page list of things that we could be working on at any time. If I could hire all of you, I would absolutely do that, and put you on some of those projects, and you would find enjoyment in working on any one of them. It's just a matter of time and money and software licensing and so on. So. Yeah, it's a little brief intro. Go ahead.
Don't let him fool you, he does important work. I'm Tony Thatcher, I'm the owner of DTM Consulting. I'm also the accountant and the treasurer and the chief programmer and the spatial data analyst and the GIS technician, editor, such is the life of a small business.
That's a really big business card.
But it's fairly typical of consulting world, though, especially with a small company. We've been as high as 7 people. Currently, we're at 2 right now, and that's a little bit just the ebbs and flows of economy. And I used to have a business partner, and that was able to build capacity that way too. But 2 seems to be a pretty good number for us right now. But we are involved in a whole variety of things. Anywhere from just creating a simple map for a rancher who wants to know where his fence lines are or something like that, to developing the software and analysis schema for the Department of Revenue for doing their agricultural lands valuation, which required a whole lot of programming and working with integrating various data sets and databases and GIS technology. So my personal background, I got into GPS data collection back in the early 90s when GPS units were about this big, and you literally had to have a dolly to run them around. And I hauled one of those down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for 2 weeks of surveying. Definitely not backpack units or palm top units. And ended up working at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, organizing these large-scale geodetic surveys, so these looking at plate tectonic motion and stuff like that. And from there I said, God, I really kind of like this mapping stuff and the technology, and I seem to be good at it, so I went and got my master's degree at Oregon State in GIS and with a secondary focus in geomorphology. And from there, I actually taught the GIS classes here for a year. My first year out here, first year out of grad school, when the major professor took off and on sabbatical, and ended up working for a consulting company for about 2.5 years before I decided to go out on my own with a friend, and because we thought we had better ideas than the way we were doing things with people that we were working for. So, and that was 15 years ago. Been running DTM Consulting for 15 years now. So it's been good.
Chris Saunders with the Department of Planning for Bozeman. I am not a geographer, although I pay them. In fact, I've paid Tony before to come do some work for us, and we still use his stuff. My educational background is in town and regional planning from Utah State, another land-grant school, obviously. And mostly, I'm on the applied side of geography, either making data requests to the city's department or figuring out how we can better do information management or analysis in ways that will make it better. Just as a case in point, when I first started, the city was somewhere before the Stone Age when it came to technology. They asked myself and another co-worker to measure the zoning map and figure out how many acres of what kind of this and that we had around the community. And it took us about 3 months. By the time we finished it all up, tabulated it, put it in a report and made it look pretty. Today our GIS system can do that in less than 5 minutes. And so we are very glad for GIS. It's been a great asset. One of the things that I deal with is simply the fact that the human brain is no longer capable of dealing with the mass and complexity of information that I have to do every day. I cannot remember all of the coordinates, all of the thises and the that's that apply to a piece of property. And so with the tools that now are available through the geographic profession, we can give information out to the public about what they can do with their property, what's their neighbor doing to their property that might affect them. We can do large-scale analytics for the community as a whole. The era of big data is really starting to move into our realm, and the ability, as Tony said, to tie disparate pieces of information together and take it into something that is better than what it would be individually is a great output that we are increasingly reliant on, and we're also increasingly aware of the fact that garbage in, garbage out is absolutely true. And so real essential in getting good data design, good metadata put together so that when somebody else who you never thought about when you assembled your information decides that they could use your information, they actually can make it work and really get a lot of leverage out of things that way. So I'm on the generally the consumer side of that kind of thing.
Does anybody have questions from the audience?
I enjoy JS and I've taken classes in it, but I'm not majoring in it. I mean, I understand it's an important tool for geographers. Do you guys have any advice for people that don't want to major in JS specifically? I mean, do you think I should scrap everything and major in JS since I like geography?
No, it's was actually a question that I was going to ask. Is who's like actually in like the GIS track here? One.
Minor.
Minor. What about like IT?
Computer science.
Computer science, okay. Sociology?
Like
What-
Human geography.
Human geography?
Yeah, like.
Okay.
Physical geography.
Anyone
applying
earth
those things to
sciences?
people.
Earth sciences?
Earth science, that's all of us, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect description of geography is that, you know, we're mutts. We're crossbreeds, we're interbred, it's dogs and cats sleeping together. And which makes it great. And GIS, for me, for my company, is just a tool. Purely just a tool. If I am looking to hire, I need somebody who is solid in GIS, but I'm not looking for a GIS major.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean, if I'm going to be hiring somebody, I need somebody since I don't have somebody and I say, okay, you're my GIS person. Here's your computer. Here's your ArcGIS software. Here's your plotter. Start making me maps. Start creating data. Start doing my analysis for me. Because I need somebody who can actually talk to a client. And so they need to communicate. They need to be a communicator. They need to be able to write back to the client and say, okay, this is what I've understood. You're saying these are our thoughts on that, and communicate that. Then take those thoughts and whether it's in GIS, whether it's in a database, whether it's in an Excel spreadsheet, whether it's in PowerPoint, or Google Earth, doesn't matter, get the work done and then communicate it back in terms of a report or or whatnot. So I'm really looking for somebody who's got, you know, a full suite of tools.
So you're saying more, you need people who can synthesize the data beyond just a use of one particular suite of programs.
So you're saying experience in it would be good, but also doing your interests.
Yeah. Part of the key with that is you've probably all noticed how fast software changes. So the stuff that you may specialize in today, you know, the next hot thing comes up and 5 years later, nobody's using what you went to school in. So that ability to learn, the ability to pick up information, process information, retool every, let's see, how often do they do releases? About every 6 months? You know, literally you are relearning the job, at least in my shop, at a minimum of every 2 years, because the legislature meets and changes all the rules for us. And so there's always a constant turnover in what's the expectation. You know, it used to be everything that we put out was a paper map. That just was the default for it. Now everybody wants digital, and so if you can't make that transition for, well, if I lay it out differently on paper because the experience of interacting with that map is going to be different than if it's something where somebody's saying, I want to be able to read it on my smartphone. I want to have live access. I don't want a static display because by the time I get to it, it's out of date. So just that constant evolution.
I'll echo on what Tony said is the GIS software, you probably will all end up using it somewhere in your field, or you'll have somebody working for you that will be the user of that. But it's kind of like an accountant doesn't sit there all day and work on Excel. It's a tool that they use, but the whole discipline of accounting is much more than that. It's much more personable, it's much more relationship driven, and it's understanding problems. And what we do a lot of times is try and understand what the user's problems are, and maybe GIS can help solve that tool, maybe not. Maybe another application can solve that better. We have several access users that are working just fine in that environment, and we don't bring that into GIS at all. On occasion we do, but it's not something that we sit all day and work on for that user. Some of the things that you probably would want to brush up on if you're going to try and use geography to kind of work in a human component within whatever organization you're in, or bring that concept to your coworkers or to your boss or whatnot, is how do I leverage that tool to accomplish my job, or to make wherever I'm working a better environment. And some of those things may be certainly database knowledge. That's a big one. I think Tony would agree that we're becoming much more of database administrators than we probably ever thought we would do. I hate that world. I don't like it. My brain just doesn't think that way. But I end up having to work with SQL Server more than I ever thought I would. But I mean, that kind of knowledge under your belt would be really beneficial. Certainly web tools where you're going to be able to push that information out to public and private users, or users within your own company. Maybe bringing in a geographic component would certainly be helpful. Bring it, and being able to make those connections and learn where can I bring these tools together to accomplish a problem, and being able to decipher with that problem what would be some of the techniques I need to put in place in order to make it successful, and GIS may be just a piece of that.
Yeah, I think Alan hit on a really important topic there. Is GIS is one tool, but it's having the more tools that you can have. I mentioned databases. GIS is based on databases. It's a spatial database. That's the only way to explain it. So you have to understand database concepts. You got to understand what a relationship is. You got to understand what a query is. You got to know some of the SQL language in order to develop queries and whatnot. And then the other tools that are just really important in our shop, and I don't think you can get away without at least having some rudimentary knowledge of, is some programming of some level. If you're gonna be using any kind of digital tool, even if it's just Excel, you gotta at least know how to write a macro in Excel. And, you can build on that into writing, Python scripts for ArcGIS, or getting into VBA or something like that. And that's when for a small company like mine, it's really important that somebody has all these sorts of tools, or at least some ability to jump into them. You never know when you're gonna download some script off the Esri website or Stack Exchange or something like that and go, cool, this almost does what I want it to do. Okay, now what can I change? And just be able to go in and just deconstruct it, put in the extra piece that you need, even if it's just changing one line, and getting that script to work. That's where you start becoming value added to your employer. I don't think we can we're all kind of small shops here. I mean, even the city's a small shop in many ways. Because there's two other sides of GIS, or spatial science, geography. And that's the big companies, and I include government in that. So, I mean, the USDA soils, yeah, NRCS. They literally, in the federal building down here, they had about 8 techs, day in, day out, clicking, digitizing, attributing, updating soils databases. And I think they're still working on that stuff with the updates. But, I knew people there who had been doing that for 8-10 years. That's
And
what they did.
you take that for granted when
Yeah.
you see it. You don't realize all the effort that went into creating that.
Yeah.
And now you just pull it up and view it and go, that's good. And use it for just a brief second or whatever. But all the work.
So there is a set of the population, the GIS users, the geographers out there, who that's what they do. I mean, and if you're in a big company, you might just be going to the back room and you're digitizing oil pipelines or electrical conduits or something like that. And then the other piece that you guys are immersed in right now is academics. And that's really an entire different track from the applied stuff that we're talking about here. And it's very different because we kind of butt heads sometimes when we work with professors because they want to get into statistical significance. I think I have an aversion to that because I can hardly say it. And we've got $2,000 to analyze this data set and write a report. It's like, we don't have your $20,000 in 2 years. So it's a very different thing. So if you're into the academic side, it's a very different track.
I was wondering if you could tell us about a couple of the projects that are going on in the county. I'm just curious, like a couple of big things you're working on,
A couple big ones.
just generally.
One real big one was, and this is one of my big pushes within the county, now that you asked, is what I call enterprise database integration, meaning that we have offices that house information. And people, these offices will come to us sometimes and they'll say, well, we have this data silo of information and they have that data silo of information. Can you make something that kind of talks to the two of them? And we're the office that folks come to make that happen. So we had a silo of information in what's called the Clerk and Recorder's office. You can think of them as the safe deposit box for Gallatin County. They store everything from a deed to a speed limit ordinance to surveys and so on. That's information that's tied to geography. And we have information that's geographical, that you can show the picture of the geography. And so we wanted to build a tool for the public to be able to go on our website, and it's active now, you can go there. And I want to be able to click on a parcel, and I want to be able to determine all the history of that parcel, like when did it first get created? Did it get sold to somebody? Was it resurveyed? Was there a release of sanitary restrictions? Was there a repossession? All that stuff now comes up as one table. It goes back through all the records and puts it all under one interface. Now, there's a lot of code that goes into that and a lot of database actions behind the scene, but that's something our customers want. They want instant access to that information. I don't want to have to go pour through records and pull it up. So now you can tie that in. Now, another silo of information would be septic permitting. Was there a septic permit granted on that parcel of land? And so I want to be able to pull that information in from environmental health, have it all under the same tab. We also have two other tabs there, one that goes to how it's being taxed, and another one that goes to how it's being assessed. Assessing is, what size buildings you have. Do you have a swimming pool? Do you have a pole barn or whatever? Well, your assessment value is so high, and we apply a millage to that, and it equals your taxes. So there's different agencies working on different silos of information, and under a geographic component, which everybody can understand. It's like, I'm here, I'm going to go there, and I want to find out about my neighbor, and they live there. We can all understand that relationship, and so we're pulling that information in under one web application for the users to see. A couple other projects we're working on. This last summer, we started working on our trails layer. The Forest Service has trails data, but it's not very good. So we wanted to update that trails information through the cities and counties and such, and ultimately we're going to put that into a phone application so that you're on your bike and you're like, oh no, I come to the end of the trail. How do I get from here to there? And if you can get internet access, you can pull up the trails information, and I can say, well, I got to take this road through here that'll connect me to this other spur, and I'll be able to go on from there. So landfill is another one that just came up. The landfill wants to determine where all their customers are coming from. And that's a real simple map, but they collect that information, and we bring that into GIS, and we put that on a map, and they can see the clusters throughout the county of where all their customers are coming and dumping, and what kind of materials they're dumping. So we can color code that information so they can see what's coming into the landfill on a monthly basis. That's just 3 right now. But
Those sound good.
some are little, some are longer.
A lot of the kinds of things Alan's talking about also become ongoing projects. The city's working, our GIS department is starting a new project on stormwater control. For a long time, the solution to stormwater was you let it go somebody else's property. Well, these days, it's now an issue of the city, for whatever reason, is assigned responsibility for everybody inside of its boundaries, and we are assigned a single permit for everybody who's inside of our boundaries. And if we allow discharges out of the city into the waters of the state or the country, and it exceeds those permit limits, then we can be fined thousands of dollars a day. Well, great. How do you keep track of who's discharging what out of the, 18,000 parcels we have in the city, with more getting developed all the time? You have to have a tool. And so they're going off and they're mapping where are the streams, where are the receiving bodies, where are the discharge points, to start just putting the data set together. Eventually, at some point, that will likely end up as a utility, where you get a bill every so often to pay for collecting, treating, and safely discharging of your stormwater. It wasn't necessarily anything we jumped up and said, we want to do this. We got told, you will be doing this. It's now federal law. Thank you very much. The discussion is over. And so you end up having to find those tools that will let you manage those things. And there's no way you could realistically do it without some computer mapping to keep track of the segments, all the rest of the attributes that go with that stuff.
You hit on something, Chris. Each one of these is like a snowball. You start that snowball and it doesn't stop rolling. Each one of those projects now continue on. There's update, there's maintenance, there's new stuff, there's collection, there's all that stuff that has to be done. It just compounds the workload, which is good, because then hopefully we can maybe hire some more people, bring some more interns on, keep things going. But usually there's very few. I mean, there are some, very few. Fun project due, end of project on its way. They usually just keep on accumulating with responsibilities and stuff.
and then they release a new version of the software that you've been using to do it, and you install it, and everything breaks.
You get to rebuild it all.
And you get to rebuild it.
So I hear that some of it is you use someone else's material because you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time. But sometimes you come to a problem where you do have to reinvent the wheel. So there's some primary source stuff that's happening, some secondary source information, and some just flat out, we're going to borrow his information. So it's just, you're using a lot of different information sources. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
And when you are having to go out and get those primary information sources, I mean, do you just, are y'all out in the field doing that yourself? Or do you have minions?
I don't do. No, that's called a bonus of the job.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the, I think one of the questions Chantal gave us was, what do you enjoy most about your profession, and what's the least? I put the least as too much time behind the computer. Yeah.
What's the most? What are you doing the most?
The most, solving problems, and it's never dull. There's always something new.
How about working with the school?
They're working with those kids that map irrigation ditches is the most fun. Yeah, we have a program with Diana Cooksey's LRES class that every fall semester, John does too at City Bozeman. We go in and try and battle for bodies to help work on one side or another, either the county or the city. And our project is an ongoing project mapping irrigation ditches and canals and waterways throughout the valley, and picking up all the attributes along there and the features that you can't see unless you're either in the ditch or next to it. And you know, some of that stuff you can find from aerial, but you can't find problems without getting on the ground. And same thing with trails that we mapped this last summer, is that most of them you can't see from the air, they're in the trees, and so you have to get on the ground and take your bike and ride or walk and pick up a lot of that with GPS.
Yeah, I think that brings up a point, you know, the snowballing of data and what it is, and the detail of it is, it's just phenomenal. I mean, every month it seems like we're learning about a new data source that's available, or a data source that's been updated, or historic imagery that has now been scanned and geo-referenced. And, you know, and then you get an even more detailed data set. We used to be really psyched with the 1995 black and white digital raster graphics. And it was all our little computers that were actually really good computers at the time could do to handle like a 30 megabyte file, you know, and plot it out in black and white, 5-meter resolution black and white. And you know, we did a whole series of these for the county that are actually, they're still hanging in the racks.
Yeah, a big bunch of plots.
Yeah, and now the latest National Ag Imagery Program data is 4-band color and natural photography at like 2-foot resolution, and one compressed data set is 120 megabytes, and when that gets uncompressed, that's more like half a gig. And those are the kinds of data sets that we're processing, now. And it's just, things start snowballing. You're like, start going, well, okay, well, I got, now I'm not looking at 95 imagery, I'm looking at 95, 2001, 2005, 2009, and 2011. And so what was just a quick, easy thing, with limited information, now can be at this really actually detailed time series analysis. So.
And people are asking for, because the capacity now exists, the list of questions they want answered has escalated geometrically as well. Oh, well, now I know, because I saw it on TV, that you can go into a data set and some magic happens somewhere and everything I ever wanted to know is instantly available. By the way, I know I don't have an appointment, but can you tell me that now? And so just that need for ability to quickly know what your data sets are, know how you connect with them, how to do that problem solving. So they think they want something and it's the wrong thing, and you have to politely explain to them that what they really need is something else and get them directed in the right way. And these things become major drivers. Alan referenced the mapping project that they're working on for the ditches. Makes a huge difference because obviously we've been doing agriculture in the valley for a long time. A lot of the ditches that somebody used to irrigate with actually isn't a ditch, it's a stream, but somebody straightened it out because it was more convenient. Well, there's a completely different set of law that applies to a true irrigation ditch, 100% human-made, versus live water. Totally different permitting sets, totally different sets of who you have to talk with. If it's a true irrigation ditch, the farmer has a right to drive his bulldozer right through the middle of whatever you've got in the way that's blocking his irrigation ditch. You don't get to object. They just get to clear out their ditch. And so that question of how do I know what is the right data? Did somebody, when they were out in the field, did they find the right spot for the point of diversion? Those kinds of details rapidly turn into significant projects when someone comes in and says, oh, I want to process a subdivision, Mr. Saunders, is that okay? And I have to look and say, well, I can see there's a water course. Do you have the permissions from the right people? What are you proposing to do with this? If it's live water, then we have to worry about those water quality issues. So very quickly, this one little line on a map and one little set of attributes becomes a many $million-dollar question.
I was wondering, what was your most favorite and then least favorite from a small startup, and then from a city, what was your most and least?
Probably my least favorite thing is I have a demented pleasure of debugging code. But I hate it when it turns into a software manufacturer, their error. And so that's my least favorite thing is dealing with other people's mistakes on their end that are, cause me a week of time and frustration. My favorite thing is just the diversity. I mean, there are certain times where it is just like any job. It's like, oh my God, I am going to be digitizing for 4 months, and that's what I'm doing. But then that part is done, and then I took a month analyzing the data and just doing all sorts of backflips with doing spatial analysis and intersecting data layers and bringing them into databases and Excel spreadsheets and graphs and stuff like that. And then another month writing another master's thesis essentially of what the results were, and that was for a project on the Yellowstone River. In another month here, I'm probably going to be working on something completely different. So.
I think the thing I enjoy most is being able to work with all of this cool information as part of the process of seeing a good project come out of the ground. You can drive past it and say, hey, I had a piece of that, even if it's just a little bitty piece. That's cool to think that you had some part of the development of your community. The least favorite part is having to explain why something means that somebody can't do what they want. Whether it's that ditch that they didn't think was a ditch, but really is, or if it's just something completely different. So that's not so much a geography element yet.
I have a question. How have your expectations of where you thought you'd be going in your career from the beginning to now, how did they line up with reality? And what have you learned in the process?
That was one of your questions that I didn't put anything down for, so I'm still thinking about that one, yeah.
No, I do. I'll take it on, I guess. I think probably the best, I guess it comes out as advice, is not to have expectations of your career. I honestly, because anytime that I go into a project or a section of my life that I expect things to come out a certain way or go a certain way, or gonna go, my goal is to climb that mountain, you know. If you aren't enjoying the process along the way and enjoying the diversions and if you're so focused on, you know, okay, I'm gonna be get my degree in GIS, I'm gonna work for somebody for 2 years, go get my master's degree, and then I'm gonna go work for CH2M Hill and be the, you know, top GIS person, you know, and whatever. Then you're just setting yourself up, you know, you get, especially kind of out here, if you want to stay in Montana, you gotta kind of roll with it and take what comes along and be willing to bounce out of the area and get some experience. And so just, yeah, I mean, when I started into this, I didn't think I'd be running my own company. And I've been doing it for, 15 years now. That's good. I get to go ski. I get to go skiing tomorrow.
In college?
Did I what?
Did you take any accounting classes in college?
No. No. Luckily there's software for that.
Yeah.
And then you hire somebody to do the taxes for you and make sure you aren't breaking any rules.
Along the way, on-the-job training.
Yeah. It does take a certain mindset though to go into business for yourself.
I'd say that this field, and this is true, you could say this about any field, it changes so fast. I mean, who'd have known, 15 years ago that you wouldn't be able to get a regular film camera process anymore. I mean, it just completely changed that whole industry around. I mean, in '95, or when we first did all of our mapping for Gallatin County, we didn't have a single aerial photo to our name. We did it all blind. We had nothing to look and check against until 1998, I think is when we got the 95 imagery. It took that long, and that was the first of its kind. So, and look at how we've changed now. Everything's on Google. We have a much more educated audience that we are dealing with than we ever did before. When they call, at least in our case, when they call with questions, they're already fairly educated about something. Not everyone, but much more so. And we're only going to have a more educated audience because that geographic element is available to everybody now, and everyone's used to it. I guess when I was in geology, I saw this as a tool at the time, the GIS, and I thought, wow, this is great. I can apply this tool to subsurface analysis. And there were other tools available to do that, and I did a little bit of work in that. But then I think just more of this was a brand new field that kind of opened up the geography porthole again, where geographers were dying and starving to death. They really had no place to go. So now this opened up a whole new world to them to apply their knowledge of geography, earth sciences and such, by using these tools that everybody was demanding. I don't know, I just kind of got caught up in the tornado of activity in this, and yeah, I changed focus completely from subsurface to more surface analysis, and I've enjoyed it, I guess, ever since. I don't know what else I do.
Well, I never planned on being in Montana.
You were in urban planning?
Town and regional, yeah. And the one thing that is in some ways the most different from what they tell you in school is really how little control you have over anything. You can offer suggestions, you can help document studies, you can do other things, but it's the folks that walk in the door and say, this is my money that I'm willing to put into this particular project that really makes something happen or not happen. And if nobody wants to do that, then it just sits there vacant or whatever. And so I think the collaborative nature is much broader than what they ever mentioned in school. That it's not that you're a cog in a machine, you're a person, you interact with people, but it's an incredibly complex system that actually makes anything happen. And the GIS and the geography is important because it affects how people interact with life. I had a long conversation a few months back disabusing a guy who lived 8 miles east of town over the mountain that because his zip code said Bozeman, he was not actually a Bozeman city resident, but he was convinced that he was. And we've talked to people and said, you know, where do you think the city limits are? And about 10% of them actually identify the legal limit of Bozeman, where all of my authority stops, as having anything to do with the definition of Bozeman. It's trade area, it's, well, what can I see from my house? It's, you know, what's the commute patterns? A lot of things that are shaped by the geography. And so the geography really definitely helps people understand where their community is. So the sense of community is radically different from the legal definitions. And just that interaction with people and where they see as their place. You know, you come out of school and you think it's going to be nice, neat little boxes, and people will come and you'll talk to them and you'll describe this, that, and the other thing. And you know, Alan's worked long enough to know that the lines between where the cities and the county's interests are a lot blurrier in reality than what they look like on the maps. Especially when the city keeps annexing pieces and changing the lines on everybody. So I think that's probably the biggest change, is that on one hand, increased scope and much less clarity.
So what kind of advice do you have for students who are just getting ready to, you know, they go to career fair and they're talking to CH2M Hill or, you know, at an oil and gas company or whoever happens to be there that's looking for geography majors, to really hit the ground running when they're either looking for an internship or their first job out of college? What's going to help them put them ahead of everybody else?
If you're looking for a particular person or firm that you want to work with, know as much about them as they do. Who are they? What do they do? What are their current big projects? What do you have that you can bring to them and say, I can fix your problem here? And don't lie. They'll know that real fast. But you know, if you don't have something to bring, we're all nice, kind, caring people, but at least I'm not anyway, in the business of your self-actualization. I have deadlines, I've got budgets, and I certainly want my staff to grow and experience their own development. But if they do that while the work's getting done, then that's the best world possible. But if the work's not getting done, then we're gonna have a parting of the ways. And that's because if that doesn't happen, I'm gonna be parting the ways. And it just, you know, the accountability is in some cases very, very direct.
Be open to any possibility. Don't go in and say, I've interviewed enough people who like, oh, I just graduated and I want to go do field data collection with GPS. It's like, God, so would I. If you can find one of those jobs for me, that would be great. You know, that's, you know, like I said earlier, that's kind of a perk. There are a few people who are lucky enough and have the desire to actually go out and do that all the time. But be willing to work the trenches. I've interviewed a lot of really sharp, good people with no experience. And I tell them, you know, Bozeman's a tough place to find a job. Go check out Seattle, go check out Colorado, go check out Boston, check out Chicago, whatever. Work for one of these big companies for a couple of years and come back and knock on my door. And you'll come back and you'll be bringing something to me. And so it is hard to come into a company like mine without any experience. And anybody that you make contact with, whether it's locally or away, follow up. Follow up. Hey, it's just walking down the block. It's amazing how many emails I get from folks like you. And I see your address is, you know, it's right there on your resume that you're giving me, and it's 4 blocks away. It's like, why didn't you come and hand deliver this to me? And shake my hand. and stop back in a month later and shake my hand and sit down. I sit down with anybody who wants to come in the doors. Be persistent.
Thank you.
Good advice.
Yeah.
I'll add to that, that's good, I was just taking some notes here. Real project experience is always top on my list. I don't really care about GPA, maybe I should, but I care more about, have you worked in the trenches, like Tony said, have you done some projects? To me, somebody who's done some just basic digitizing, I don't care if it's a soils map or a roads layer or whatever, gives me the sense that you know how to create and edit data good. I mean, that's basic work, but yet everybody really should have to do that at some point. So if you get a chance to do a job and you have to start at that level, fine, that's good. You won't regret that experience. It may get real old in a hurry, but you'll learn how to create good quality data, because I've always had the attitude that you'll never regret the time spent making that data really good. Because when you have to go back and do it again, you'll remember the time that you could have done it right. Getting some GPS experience is good. Getting the software basics is enough. You don't need to be a modeler, model builder, blah, 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 and that stuff. That's fine, but if you just know the basics to get around, chances are any one of us, if you came to work there, can show you the rest of the way, although I'm a terrible teacher. Let's see, the database I mentioned, web tools, if you just have a little bit of that experience, if you've built a website and you can show that to me, that's something you built, that's really good. Be willing to travel, Tony mentioned that. I had to leave here and go to Wyoming when I desperately didn't want to leave Montana. I grew up in Montana, I went to school at Butte, and for some reason I had a severe aversion to leaving, and that was really stupid. Because I wasn't gone that long. I was in Wyoming, Colorado, and Alabama. That was stupid going. But I was there. But then I eventually got to come back, and I came back with a lot of experience, and that's helpful. And that time won't fly so fast. You won't even worry about it. Working with consulting firms like a Tony. That's where I spent most of my early years. That gives you a lot of project experience, just rapid fire. Because you've got so many different things that are coming in the door, and you can be on different project teams, working in different units, and you get a lot of experience in a short amount of time. So when it comes to looking for work, don't send emails. I just don't think that's personable. I think sending a letter, follow up with a call, a personal visit, another personal visit, and another personal visit really helps. Keeping that FaceTime, I think is important, and keeping people on the list and getting back to them on a regular basis. That's how I wrote it.
The only other comment that I can add is, in this digital world, clean up your social profiles.
Good advice.
I've gotten personal websites listed on people's applications, and I go and it's them doing beer bongs, and it's like, been there, done it myself, but you don't want to show that side to your boss.
Don't put it on the internet.
Thank you all, that's all, extremely good advice. I hope you guys all took notes and remember when you come to career fair, if that is on your, if you put your personal website on your resume, make sure it's
LinkedIn profile is more appropriate.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And they talked about stopping by and seeing them. Even if they're not hiring, they have connections. They know people in this industry, so they can always, ask, like I was saying, dig deep, ask some questions, and make them remember you.
Yeah. Another thing, so let me just mention
No,
this
that's
too,
right.
because a lot of our projects are based upon, we have the tools and we have the space and we have the training ability, although I mentioned I'm not very good trained. But sometimes if you can work, say you did some inroads with another department, for example, and they had some funding, and you team up that funding with our software and our ability, we can make a project happen. I don't often get a chance to really go through everybody's budget and say, hey, do you have any money for this? Hey, I probably should, but I mean, if you can find money and you can find a partner for us, like in our office, we definitely put an internship together.
Thank you all for your participation, and thank you all for your questions. This is just a really quick graph from the Bureau of Labor Statistics about your degree, earnings, and your unemployment rate. So the higher your degree, less likely you are to be unemployed, and hopefully, except for those doctoral degrees, more money you're going to earn. I think it's because they all go back to teaching.
It's over 9 months.
Yeah. So we do a survey every year of our graduates, and our callers are in our office right now making these calls. After you graduate from MSU, you will get a call from Career Services asking you what you're doing, where you're working, how much you're making. Please accept those calls and answer the questions. It is really helpful to students like yourself to find out where they're going after they graduate and what's going on, and what's the potential for you. So in our last survey, we had here's our response rate. 78.4% of respondents are employed or in grad school full time. So that's our numbers are coming in. Yeah, I won't get into that part. Average salary by year and degree, and this is just across the college, not finance specifically, but bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree. Here's our in and out of state average salaries again across the college. Obviously, generally speaking, you're going to make more moving out of Montana. We all kind of know that, but there's a reason why we're all here, right? And then here, this is by college. Those engineers.
Yeah.
And then location of grads, employed grads by college as well. A lot of them are staying in state, so a lot of people are we're keeping a lot of you guys here in state, which is really good news for a land grant school like ourselves. Just some key points. We kind of, you hear this, I swear every single workshop we do, there's some key points that you can draw out of every single one. Do an internship, give something a try. Communicate with your advisor, who you know, make some connections. A lot of times you'll hear that graduate's first job, or if they are unemployed later on down the line, they call back their advisor. What do you know that's going on in the industry? And they're good networkers for that. Attend some workshops. Thank you all for coming to this one. And meet with a career coach. And the career coach is really, as I was listening to everybody speak, they're going to help you figure out, like, what are your niches? Where can you go? Where your interests and talents are, and maybe that's something you can work into your degree and really set yourself apart when you're interviewing. And then, of course, use all of our services here at Career Services. They're all available to you. They're free. Take advantage of that.